Chapter 5. The Letter and a Confession. The morning light filtered gently through the curtains, soft and golden, brushing against the papers scattered across Leila's desk. She had fallen asleep at the table, her notebook open, her pen lying across the page like it had been dropped mid-thought. The echoes of the previous night still clung to her, the laughter of children, the shaky notes of guitars, the warm pride in Alejandro's eyes. And also, in another layer of memory, the glitter of the gala, the scent of wine, the glow of chandeliers, and Markus Vogel's voice murmuring at her side. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. Her body felt heavy, but her heart felt strangely light, as if a knot she hadn't known was there had finally loosened. Yet alongside that lightness was another sensation, a quiet ache. Choices, she knew, always carried shadows. Her phone buzzed, a new message. She reached for it, and Markus's name lit the screen. "Leila, I know you left the gala early. I would like to see you before I depart New Zealand. One conversation, nothing more." She read the words twice. There was no anger in them, no demand, just a request. For a long moment she stared at the phone, torn. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to avoid the discomfort of explaining what she herself was only beginning to understand. But another part of her, the journalist, the woman who valued clarity, knew she owed him more than silence. She typed back, "Yes, when and where?" His reply came quickly, "This afternoon. The hotel cafe, 3 o'clock. The cafe was quiet when she arrived, a place designed for discretion. Low lighting, deep chairs, the murmur of soft music playing from hidden speakers. Markus was already there, sitting by the window, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. He rose when he saw her, his posture as precise as always, but his eyes softer than she remembered. "Leila," he said warmly, "thank you for coming." She sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. For a moment, neither spoke. The air carried the faint scent of roasted beans, the clink of distant cups. Finally, Markus broke the silence. "You left the gala suddenly." "I did," Leila admitted. Her voice was steady, though inside she felt her chest tighten. "I had somewhere else I needed to be." He studied her face carefully, his gaze not unkind. "With him." It was not a question, but a statement. Leila lowered her eyes. "Yes." Markus leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. The lines around his mouth softened, not in disappointment but in understanding. "I thought so." "I didn't mean to," she began, but he raised a hand gently, stopping her. "No, you don't need to explain. You are not someone who plays with hearts, Leila. That much I know. But I would be dishonest if I pretended I hadn't hoped." Her throat tightened. She had expected anger, perhaps wounded pride. But instead, Markus's voice carried only calm resignation, tinged with sadness. "I admired you," he continued, his accent wrapping around the words with deliberate care. "Not only for your sharp questions, though those challenged me. I admired your discipline, your clarity, your refusal to be dazzled by power. You stood before me as an equal when others only sought to flatter. That is rare." Leila blinked hard, willing herself not to cry. "Markus." He shook his head slightly, a faint smile crossing his lips. "No regrets. You have chosen, and I respect that. But allow me one truth of my own. If you had chosen differently, I would have welcomed you into my life, not as a journalist, not as a voice in the crowd, but as a partner. I wanted you to know that." The words hung between them, heavy with sincerity. Leila swallowed, then spoke softly. "I care about you, Markus, truly. But what you offer, it's not my story, not the one I need to live." "I know," he said. His smile was small, bittersweet. "He offers you something I cannot. I have always lived among speeches, among expectations. He lives among songs." The simplicity of the sentence cut straight through her. For a long moment they sat in silence, the world outside the cafe moving on without them. Then Markus stood, slipping a folded envelope across the table. "For you," he said. "A letter, not persuasion. Just words I wanted to leave you with. Read it when you are ready." Leila took it quietly, her fingers brushing the smooth paper. He extended his hand. She rose and shook it, but the handshake shifted naturally into a brief, warm embrace. When he pulled back, his eyes glistened faintly, though his composure never broke. "Be happy, Leila," he said softly. "That will be enough for me." And with that, he turned and walked out, his figure tall and steady as it disappeared into the hum of the hotel lobby. Leila sat back down, the envelope resting on the table in front of her. She stared at it for a long while, the weight of his farewell pressing against her chest. She felt the ache of what might have been, the tenderness of his honesty, the respect of a man who could have demanded more but chose dignity instead. Finally, she slipped the envelope into her notebook without opening it. Some truths, she decided, could wait. When she stepped out into the daylight, the city felt different, brighter, clearer, alive with possibility. She had said goodbye to one path, one future. It hurt, yes, but the ache was clean, not bitter. She was lighter now, freer to walk the road she had chosen. And as the sea breeze brushed against her face, she realized she was no longer afraid of the silence. The evening air carried the scent of saltwater and jasmine when Leila walked through the narrow streets toward the community center. It was late spring in Auckland, and the days were stretching longer, spilling sunlight into hours that once belonged to night. Children's laughter drifted from open windows, mingling with the distant cries of gulls wheeling above the harbor. In her bag, tucked beside her notebook, lay the envelope Markus had given her. She had not opened it yet. She wasn't sure when or if she would. For now, it was enough to know it was there, a reminder of respect of what she had let go. The community center's doors stood open, light pouring into the street. Inside, voices rose and fell, a patchwork of conversation, music, and the scrape of chairs across wooden floors. She stepped in quietly, the warmth of the place wrapping around her like a familiar shawl. Alejandro was at the far end of the hall, tuning his guitar. His head was bent, curls falling forward, his fingers precise as he tightened the strings. Around him, children gathered with instruments half their size, ukuleles, violins, battered drums. Their chatter quieted when he strummed a few notes, testing the sound. Leila paused by the doorway, watching. There was no stage here, no polished speech, no glittering lights. And yet, something about the scene filled her with more gravity than any political event she had ever covered. When Alejandro looked up and saw her, his face broke into a smile. Not surprised, not questioning, just open, as if he had expected her all along. "You came," he said, setting the guitar gently on his lap. "I said I would," Leila replied, slipping her bag onto a chair. "You say many things," he teased softly, eyes glinting. "But this is good." She sat down, folding her hands over her knees. "What's tonight?" "A rehearsal," he said. "For the festival next week. The children want to play by the water. Too many gulls, too much wind, but they insist, so we practice." His smile widened, but his tone carried affection. One of the younger boys, no more than 8, tugged at Leila's sleeve. "Will you sing with us?" he asked. Leila laughed. "I'm not much of a singer." "Then clap," Alejandro suggested. "Every song needs rhythm." She found herself nodding, easing into the circle. The music began, halting, imperfect, but alive. Little fingers plucked strings, drums thumped out uneven beats, voices rose, sometimes sharp, sometimes flat, always eager. Alejandro's guitar guided them, steady and patient, pulling the sound together like a thread stitching fabric. Leila clapped along, her palms warming with the rhythm. Slowly, her shoulders loosened, her breath deepened. She was no longer watching from the edge of the room, she was part of it. When the rehearsal ended, children scattered to chase each other outside, their laughter echoing in the twilight. Leila stayed, stacking chairs with Alejandro. "You fit here," he said simply, lifting 2 chairs onto a table. She shook her head. "I'm just visiting." "No," Alejandro replied. He placed a chair down carefully and looked at her. "Maybe at first, but not anymore." Leila met his gaze, and for a long moment neither spoke. She felt the words hovering on her lips, heavy, unsaid. "I met Markus today," she said finally. Alejandro's expression flickered, curiosity, then restraint. "And?" "It was goodbye." Alejandro nodded slowly, as if he had expected nothing else. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need them. Leila exhaled. He gave me a letter. Will you read it? Someday, she murmured, but not yet. Alejandro's eyes softened. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. You don't need words written on paper to know where you belong, he said quietly. Something shifted inside her then, like the last stone dislodging from a dam. For so long she had measured everything in words, in headlines, in neat paragraphs crafted to make sense of chaos. But here, in this room, with Alejandro's steady gaze and the echo of children's laughter still ringing in the air, she realized some truths needed no writing at all. She didn't reply. She only stood there, letting the silence speak for her. The following week, the festival bloomed along the waterfront. Stalls lined the pier, the smell of roasted corn and grilled fish drifting through the air. Banners flapped in the breeze, bright against the blue of the sky. On the small wooden stage near the water's edge, Alejandro and the children took their places, instruments gleaming in the sun. Leila stood among the crowd, notebook in hand, but for the first time she wasn't there to chase a story. She was there to witness, to belong. Alejandro strummed the opening chords, and the children followed, their music rising like birds over the harbor. The notes were imperfect, the rhythm uneven, but the joy was unmistakable. People clapped along, feet tapping, voices joining in where they could. Leila found herself writing, not out of duty, but out of desire. Her pen moved across the page, capturing not just sound but feeling. The way the sun lit Alejandro's face, the way the children's eyes sparkled with pride, the way strangers leaned into each other, connected for a fleeting moment by music. Her article would not be about Markus, or politics, or policy. It would be about this, the fragile, stubborn beauty of ordinary lives. The children's final song ended in a burst of clapping, the crowd's applause rolling like waves against the waterfront. Alejandro set his guitar down carefully, his shoulders flushed with both effort and pride. The children beamed, some bowing dramatically, others grinning shyly as people whistled and cheered. Leila stood just off stage, notebook pressed to her chest. She had been scribbling furiously, not out of duty, but out of a need to capture the moment. The laughter, the sun on the harbor, the way the music lifted strangers into a single rhythm. When Alejandro stepped down, their eyes found each other immediately. He crossed the short distance toward her, the noise of the festival wrapping around them like a tide. You saw them, he said, breathless with excitement. They played with everything they had. They did, Leila replied, her voice soft but steady. And so did you. He laughed lightly, but there was a tremor beneath it, a hesitation. Then, in a sudden stillness, with people streaming past them and music echoing from another stage down the pier, he spoke lower, his accent thickening as it often did when he felt most vulnerable. Leila, he said, I love you. The words landed simply, without flourish, but they struck through her like music sharper than any note. For a heartbeat, she could only stare at him, the harbor spinning gently in her vision. She had always thought love would arrive with fireworks, with certainty, with some sweeping declaration. Instead, it arrived like this, quiet, steady, undeniable. Her throat tightened, but the words came easily. I love you too. Alejandro's eyes shone, and for the first time in her life, Leila felt no need to explain, no need to weigh or measure. The truth was enough. The children ran past them then, shouting for snacks, tugging Alejandro back toward the stalls. He grinned at her once more before following, his hand brushing hers briefly, just long enough to promise the words were real and lasting. Leila stood in the fading sunlight, her heart lighter than it had been in years. For once, she wasn't recording someone else's story. She was living her own. That night, back in her apartment, she placed the notebook on her desk and set Markus's unopened letter beside it. She lit a small lamp, casting a warm pool of light across the pages. Her pen hovered, then moved, spilling words she hadn't planned, words that surprised her. Some choices are not made with reason. They are made with rhythm, with the quiet pulse of a song that carries us forward. I chose not the world of speeches, but the world of music. Not the path that dazzles, but the path that feels like home. She stopped reading the lines. Then, gently, she closed the notebook. Outside her window, somewhere down the street, the faint sound of a guitar drifted into the night. She leaned back, eyes closed, and let it fill her. This was her story now. Not borrowed, not observed, but lived.